Hello, everyone. It's Shane Conto, your Wasteland reviewer, and welcome to the Development Hell podcast. And the movie club is back. Six of us. This has been the most we've had in a while, and we're all here to talk about some apes as we're diving into the 1968 science fiction classic, Planet of the Apes, from director Franklin J. Schaffner, and of course, starring Charlton Heston. And as we always do, we're going to circle around and give our general thoughts. Also, letting you know how many times we've seen this film and also a little bit of our experience with this now 10 film franchise because they just keep making those ape movies. And we're probably going to get an 11th. So we'll see. So let's get some aping around and let's start. Joe, what were your general thoughts? A little bit of
So,
background.
right. So this was the second time I've seen the original Planet of the Apes movie. Growing up, my first movie was unfortunately the Tim Burton Planet of the Apes film, which for me, as a 10-year-old, 8-year-old kid, it was nothing bad. I didn't see it as being a bad movie. I just saw it as this wacky, sci-fi Tim Burton thing that didn't feel like a Tim Burton movie. Um, my dad hated it. In fact, he hated it so much that he's like, Joe, this is what they're doing. Because like when I remember watching the remake, my dad would just consistently talk about everything they're doing wrong and how it doesn't make sense. So then we watch the original Planet of the Apes. And I'll be honest with you, Dad, it still doesn't make sense. If anything, I would argue in the second time watching this film and watching the new Planet of the Apes movies, that franchise perfectly understands how to create this weird off the wall concept, which originally was, I'll be honest with you, just as far fetched as reading something like H.G. Wells' Men on the Moon, where they assume that you can breathe on the moon and just like walk in. Whereas I think the person that came up with the short story is like, oh, in 2,000 years, apes are going to be the master race. Why? Just because there was no crazy experiments. It's like that's just how time travel works. Like with a lot of holes in there. Um, and it's something that I feel like I'm appreciating more when I'm trying to write my own sci-fi in the sense of suspense of disbelief versus what type of sci-fi you want to create, where you're asking questions but also asking the right type of questions. But with all that said and done, I view this movie more as campy goodness in the same vein as like I view, the Batman original Batman series. It's got its moments, but there's so many things in there, creative choices that just seem so odd, but yet it still works. When it comes from like Heston's random deliveries, right? Or like, even the ape, how the apes are like acting, because like at first you don't really understand. They're supposed to be like pre-colonial type apes, but are they also supposed to be like industrial age apes? Because they're walking around with their cigars, like they're like police bailiffs and whatnot. So like even the idea and culture of like what's going on is a bit confusing, but like it still kind of works in a certain way. I mean, it's kind of funny. I went in talking about this without even mentioning that Rod Serling worked on the screenplay for this, where it does feel like an episode of the Twilight Zone, but like one of those episodes that are a little bit more wackier and campier in the same vein is like trying to think of one that was like pretty campy. I mean, I'm sure we can all probably think of one that was pretty up there as being one of the campier ones, but yeah, those are my thoughts.
How about you, Kevin?
Sorry, I had to adjust my audio there. So this was, I think, my second time seeing this movie. Uh, I haven't seen it in a very long time. The first time I saw this, I was maybe 8 or 9 years old. This is the first Planet of the Apes movie I ever saw. Um, I saw this one and the Tim Burton one probably around the same time. I remember being confused, like Joe, by both of them when I was a little kid. And I haven't seen either of those until now. This is my first time revisiting any of the older Apes movies. I haven't seen any of the sequels. I saw the three of the more recent rebooted movies, Rise, War, and Dawn. I haven't seen Kingdom yet. So far, I've liked them all. I don't actually remember much about the Tim Burton movie, to be honest. I remember being confused by it as a child. But in all the movies, I remember being impressed by the effects. And actually, that is still carried over, even revisiting this very first one. Watching this one today, I just watched it a few minutes ago before I jumped on. I was really impressed by the makeup, especially the way they blended the prosthetics in with the actors' eyes. It seemed pretty natural, at least for the time. That was honestly pretty impressive. Narratively, I guess we've seen derivatives of this, in the decades since it's come out, but it still managed to impress me. I was, you know, I was intrigued by it, by the themes it was presenting, uh, and also the ape smoking the cigar was actually pretty cool. That was my takeaway.
It was cool. It was interesting. It was like just seeing him smoke a cigar. It's like it's kind of it's a good camp, you know.
Good camp. Good
Good
camp.
camp.
How about you, Matt?
So I like this movie. I forget if I've seen this before. I've definitely seen like huge chunks of it, but probably this is my first time ever watching it like all the way through, start to finish. Um, what are some of my takeaways of it? I think that so a lot of it's like science fiction, well, it's like movies in general. If you can watch something and then maybe kind of like draw parallels in like real world parallels. I thought that was kind of interesting and like a theocracy kind of like state kind of situation where like they're talking a lot of using the word like heresy and all these other like random words in the context of like the search for like knowledge and science and it's like and I think one of like the tribunal like apes or whatever even says something about like there's no division between uh like the church and like the great lawmaker, which I guess is kind of like their like messiah sort of, which I guess kind of translated into Caesar in like the more recent movies, or at least the movie that just came out that's gonna kickstart maybe like its own new trilogy. I think that's the Kingdom movie, right? But then like talking about there's no division between like that and then also like what they're doing, they which they're kind of like describing as kind of like high scientific things when really just like lobotomizing people. And I think they even said like they were gonna like emasculate like Charles and Heston. And it's like, well, what's that got to do with his brain? That doesn't make any sense. Why is this language censor there? I don't know. But I thought it was a really smart movie. And I forgot that the you blew it up line was how the movie ends. I forgot that was like the movie kind of like the way that it wraps around itself to say like, hey, so like we kind of like caused this, and then that's it. Like there is no like he hops back in like the spaceship. So I guess I was like confusing it with the Tim Burton movie, but then, even then like it's still kind of like it's still I don't know the apes still kind of rule the world or whatever. But no, I think it's a good movie. I think it's a good movie. I think yeah, theocracy is controversial, but you know, which is okay. Sci-fi is supposed to be controversial, right? Yeah, that's my thoughts.
How about you, Jim?
This was my second time watching the original. I'd never seen the 2001 Tim Burton until today, and I didn't finish it. Not because I hated it, I just didn't have time. Um, that movie aside, I kind of did hate it, low key, but moving on. I saw this movie when I was young. Hadn't watched it again until now, and I haven't seen any of the other movies in the franchise. I don't know if I'm the only one in the group that this is like my only reference to the whole franchise. Um, Kind of intriguing to think that we get some background on the creator and how that society was put together in future films. I'd be interested to watch for that, like for some more world building. From what I understand, this story was supposed to be satirical, not to be examined too closely, not to be taken too seriously. Um, Even though I tend to do that, so I thought it was kind of schlocky in some of the satire. Some of the jokes didn't really work. Uh, I thought Charlton Heston's Taylor character was just repulsive. I don't know how you guys feel about him, but all in all, I I need to go back and count how many times I've said this. Like after watching a movie, I'm like, oh, I need to read the source material. Like I need to go back and read the book, or I need to go back and read the short story. The guy that wrote this also wrote The Bridge Over the River Kwai,
Mhm.
which I had to read in high school. I don't know if you guys did or not. But I feel like the science versus faith thing is really promising. I don't love how they did it in this movie per se. But as much as I disliked Charlton Heston's character, you can't really deny his screen presence. Like he's just he's something else, you know. So yeah, moving on.
Vinny?
James, was it that crazy close up in the beginning where he's just like laughing maniacally?
It's the gift that I kept sending in the group chat.
Yeah, I'd like to discuss Charlton Heston's character a little bit.
Well, when that moment happened,
Well,
I was like, what was that?
well, Vinny and I still have to talk, so Vinny, go ahead,
Yep.
and then we can expand the conversation out.
All right, so this was actually my first time seeing it. My history with the franchise before this, I saw the first one I saw was a Tim Burton remake. I saw that in middle school, and I was 11. Obviously at that age, I was like, oh, this is a cool sci-fi movie with apes versus humans. But then, of course, at the very end, just like a huge question mark went off in my brain, and I was like, I'm not gonna watch that again. Um, and then I've seen the four reboot movies that have come out since since 2010, and I loved all four of them. So seeing as Kingdom came out 2 months ago, this was definitely a good time to finally watch the original. And I thought it was a really good like sci-fi movie. Obviously, given how old the movie is, I knew the twist going into it, but that definitely didn't lessen the impact of actually like watching it for the first time, and just like the image of the Statue of Liberty like sticking out of the shore and everything, and then Charlton Heston like just like grief stricken, like realizing like what has happened like to Earth. Um, I was very impressed with the makeup. I didn't have a chance to look this up beforehand, but I could have sworn I read, so I think it won like an honorary Oscar,
John
and I think
Chambers
this might
did.
have been the movie that okay, yeah, because I think I read that this might have been the movie that influenced the Academy to make a best makeup Oscar category. But anyway, great makeup, and just we'll go further into this next thing like when we go more into the discussion. But I thought there were some really great scenes that were either low on dialogue or didn't have any dialogue at all, that really sucked me into the story a lot more than other parts of the movie. But I'll go into that as we continue.
So this honestly might be like the 10th time that I watched this movie. This is one of my favorite films. I have watched all 10 Planet of the Apes movies. I even had a New Year's Eve where I watched all five of them in a row because both my mom and my brother had plans, but I did not. So I stayed at home and watched the Planet of the Apes movies. I've seen all of them multiple times except for Kingdom, because like that was just in theaters and I haven't rewatched it yet. Um, I hate the Tim Burton one. I think it missed all of what this movie was supposed to be about and just turned it into a big mindless action movie. The makeup's incredible, but that's about it. And also, you replaced Charlton Heston with Mark Wahlberg, who was crap, crap in that movie. Negative charisma. But and also the ending of that movie, the twist makes literally no sense. Like no sense at all. It just felt like, look, shocking. This film, I watching this last night reinforces. I think this is one of the most relevant classic science fiction films today in 2024. Because watching this film now, this is basically what the Christian right is. the the whole fact that they want to throw all science is linked to religion, heresy, and anything that you say against what they specifically believe, it's like you're going to get put on trial. And it just, this is such an uncomfortably relevant watch, and just the complete lack of logic in anything that they do to poo poo any scientific evidence of anything. And it's a frustrating watch, but in a good way, because it's like, this can happen to us. This could be our future, and it's really upsetting. Charlton Heston is my favorite actor. Um, he is big, larger than life character. Taylor is an asshole, and Taylor specifically represents people in the '60s that had given up on humanity. Where basically it was like he has no qualms about leaving Earth behind and never seeing another human being ever again. And it's interesting throughout this film, him actually having to defend humanity and find an actual connection back to humanity. While he's like that kind of person who's like, humanity sucks. The apes are like, humans suck. No, you suck. And it's that energy, 100%. It's like, we can say we're terrible. You can't say we're terrible. The makeup's incredible. What John Chambers did was second to none, to the point where like he wound up being involved in a whole entire CIA operation. Argo. John Goodman played him in Argo, which is wild. Um, Maurice Evans or Morris Evans, depending on however you pronounce his first name, is Dr. Zaius, is incredible. Apparently, that was supposed to be E.G. Robinson, and Charlton Heston wanted to get his friend that job, and he politely declined because he's like, getting in this makeup every day will kill me. So he instead did Soylent Green with him a couple years later, which was one of his last films. And Roddy McDowall and Kim Hunter are fantastic. Roddy McDowall becomes the face of this franchise. And I love the new films, like they're absolutely incredible. This is much more of an intellectual experience than the newer films, which are much more grounded and actually has a lot more heart and soul to them. This I feel like is there's commentary, like this whole entire film, most of it's talking. There's not a whole lot of action here. There's a couple of action sequences. And what's also fascinating is it takes 32 minutes, I checked, before a single ape shows up in this movie.
I noticed that.
And this was directed by Schaffner, who also did and The Boys of Brazil. So, like, he made some really interesting films. And I also have to say, give a huge shout out to Jerry Goldsmith, because this score is one of the most unique, iconic scores ever put on film. It's fascinating, and it's so interesting and dynamic. But I guess an interesting place to start. So it seems like everybody has some strong feelings about Taylor. So let's start there with Taylor and Charlton Heston. So, Jim, let's start with you. Like, yeah, he's a terrible person, isn't he?
Yeah, I mean, I was trying, I made a list of like, I was trying to go positive and negative qualities. Because I was like what qualifies him to actually lead this mission? Like, he doesn't seem to he's not a good communicator. Like there's that scene where he could have just like pointed at the notepad and made a scribbling motion with his hand, but instead he like grabs the doctor and grabs it out of her hand. And I mean, it's dramatic, but I don't know.
He's dramatic.
No self-control, no gratitude whatsoever. But I like what you said about him representing like a group of people. That does make him as a character more interesting to me, because I found it really difficult to find redeeming qualities in him, except for the fact that he survives. Even though the way he speaks, he's like, he doesn't seem like he wants to be alive, but he laughs at the other guy when he says he's ready to die. So like there is a philosophy there. I feel like it's not Um, it's not portrayed to us in a positive light, and not really fleshed out either. Like that's not the point of the story at all, I guess.
He's very impulsive, isn't he?
He is a very
Definitely.
reactionary kind of person. He's a very brutish kind of person. And he is the kind of person that would probably seek violence first before, doing what he's supposed to. And he's extremely antagonistic because,
Yes.
like, he is pushing so many buttons in those first 30 minutes with the two other astronauts. Like, he is legitimately trying to be a complete and utter asshole to the one astronaut and just like basically trying to like tear his whole entire world perspective. And it's just like, I could read you like a book. And being so condescending, that laugh is so maniacal and so condescending.
I kind of get the impression he's supposed to be kind of the most animalistic, so to speak, of all the humans that land. And
Mhm.
it's kind of ironic that the people who might have been better leaders than him get taken out so early in the movie, and we're just left with him by the end.
Well, I feel like he's certainly the most resourceful of them. Like, he fights. And honestly, that's the only really way that they could get out of this situation is by fighting. Because the whole entire situation where they reveal the apes, which that's such incredible building up of tension, where they have that unnerving auditory sound that comes out of the trees and just that push in of the camera, and you're like, what's going on here? And then it turns into absolute mayhem. And he's able to survive and keep going because he is resourceful and he's scrappy and he has like him straight up yelling. The first thing that he says to them is obviously the iconic, "Get your filthy paws off of me, you damn dirty apes." And it's just like, did he need to say that? He definitely felt like he had to say that.
Well, it shows how he
Well,
felt. And I said, sorry, Vinny. I said
it's fine.
something to my girlfriend about this, like towards that part of the movie where he's in the net and he yells at the apes to get their paws off of him. I was like, he really still thinks he's superior to them, which kind of makes me uncomfortable. And like, I
Yeah,
don't know, did he feel superior to the woman on the crew? He definitely feels superior to the girl that he's dragging around behind him. Did he think he was superior to the black dude in his crew? He didn't like Landon, like it just made me really uncomfortable, you know what I mean? But
I had the
I don't
exact
know.
same
There's a bunch of
questions.
different things that I just threw up there. Vinny, go ahead.
Well, with Charlton Heston, what was his character's name? Taylor.
Taylor.
Like, I don't know if I was like reading too much into it, but when you guys were mentioning how about how impulsive he is, like throughout the movie, I was thinking that like again, this might be like reaching too far, but I was thinking like his his impulsiveness is supposed to represent the impulsiveness of humanity and how humanity's impulsiveness and like poor decision making is what led to the eventual end of the world. So I don't know if you guys have anything to say about that, but that was just one thing I was thinking about when I was watching the movie.
I think he is meant to represent the worst possible one of them to be left alive. Like, out of any of them, he is the perfect model of what Dr. Zaius and the apes perceive of humans. Like, even if he can talk and quote unquote reason, because like Taylor doesn't really reason anything. His whole entire attitude is exactly what they find wrong with humanity. And we get that Agent Smith monologue type scene with Dr. Zaius and him, where he's just like, he Dr. Zaius obviously knew the whole entire time that they were more intelligent humans, and that humanity used to rule this planet. He knew all along. His job is to keep that a secret and to keep the apes in line, because all of that and then he could just throw around, if you don't believe that, heresy, and get thrown in jail. His whole speech to Taylor is exactly who he's talking about. And that's why I feel like Charlton Heston's portrayal of Taylor and Taylor as a character is written is important. And like Matt, you brought up the whole castrating thing. He wanted to castrate him because he doesn't want Taylor to have offspring. He does not want any other humans to be born that are intelligent. And that's all part of this scheme. And also, Matt, I know you'll appreciate this. There's one killer musical number from The Simpsons that is based off of Dr. Zaius.
I
That
watched that
also had
episode.
breakdancing.
No, I'm not kidding. I rewatched that episode right after I finished Planet of the Apes.
There you
You're the
go.
best. You're the best.
I'm
I
saying
didn't
Dr.
rewatch
Zaius,
it, but I was singing Dr. Zaius, Dr. Zaius.
he could
Dr.
talk. He could
Zaius,
talk. I
Dr.
could
Zaius.
sing.
I can see a chimpanzee.
But you know what, Shane, what you were saying about how Dr. Zaius, how they want to castrate Taylor because he doesn't want them to have offspring. That reminded me of how, like, at the end, as Taylor and the girl are riding off on the horse, the what's Kim Hunter's character's name? Vera? Is it?
Zira.
I thought it was Vera, but Zira. Okay, so like Zira's nephew, I think he asks either Dr. Zaius or one of the other apes. Like he asks, "What about our future?" And then the other ape says, I think he says, I just saved it."
Yep.
So he's saying, I just saved our future because we're letting Taylor and this girl ride off on horseback and do whatever they gotta do. They're out of our hair now, so we don't have to worry about them giving us any more trouble. They're gonna learn what really happened to Earth, and they'll understand why things are the way they are here.
Yeah, and you have to remember from their perspective, they're basically just setting free a wild animal.
And just like let them go. They'll find out. And little did they know, they found out that there's super intelligent psychic human beings living under the surface. For those who have seen Beneath the Planet of the Apes,
I haven't.
the,
Nor do
the
nor do
sequel
I
I
to
haven't
want to.
seen
this
any of those.
is insane. The sequel to this is ridiculous.
Good
But
ridiculous or like
it is legitimately one of the darkest endings I've ever seen in a movie.
Mm.
Really?
Darkest endings I've ever seen in a
All
movie.
right, don't tell me. Don't tell
Well,
me.
I wasn't going to tell you. I'm just leaving it at that. Like I said,
No,
I've seen all 5 original Planet of the Apes movies multiple times, and this is by far the highest quality one. And Charlton Heston loved doing this film, had no interest in doing a sequel, and his deal was to be in the sequel because they couldn't get it greenlit without him. Was please kill me in one scene. And they're like, how about you show up at the beginning, disappear the whole movie, show up at the end, and then die? And he's like, I can do that. So, spoiler alert for that. Charlton Heston got paid and barely was in the movie.
well,
So it
well,
got
I
he
didn't
made.
even know he was into
well,
sequels.
he also has the cameo in the Tim Burton remake where like he has the one scene and he dies.
Is he in that? I didn't know
He was
that.
one of the
He
apes.
is.
Huh.
Well,
Dr. Zaius.
I
That character's name is Zaius. And
But he was
he,
a
like,
chimpanzee. He wasn't an orangutan. That's
it doesn't matter.
uh,
I don't remember
Joe,
much about the Tim
don't
Burton
ask
movie.
questions for logic in the
it-
Tim Burton Planet of the Apes
I
movie.
guess so, but that bothers me even more because the orangutans are the politicians, the chimpanzees were the scientists, and the
Gorillas are the
gorillas
warmongers,
were the warmongers.
which
That bothers me.
so yes, it's very important that like the structure of this community is like the chimpanzees are the scientists, they're the
Free
working
thinkers.
class. You have the gorillas who are the warriors, and the orangutan are the elite class. They're the holders of the religion. And yes, the rule maker was Caesar. So like that reference, if you've watched all five of the original films, you know this story is cyclical. And this whole setup is so fascinating because like that tribunal scene, which also the president of this tribunal is played by James Whitmore, aka Brooks from Shawshank Redemption,
Huh.
and many other things when he was younger. The cast in this is just incredible. So many great actors here. But like that whole scene is so frustrating. And I just love how this film slowly pulls back the layers to reveal that this is a conspiracy. And all along, like, it's not a winnable case. There's no way out of this situation because the whole deck is stacked against them. I forget who mentioned was like Joe. I know you brought up like you see this as like a campy movie. I I could get that because like honestly, on some level, it does feel kind of silly looking back and watching them all dressed up like this and stuff like that. But like this is really biting film about society, and it's very interesting to think in the '60s. This was post. Well, this was as we were having the civil rights movement, and it was the launch of the Christian right trying to take back, quote unquote, take back the country.
Yeah.
And that's really what the orangutans are representing this this horrible, this tyrannical expression of faith that is all consuming, all controlling.
And also, I just want to say in terms of in Planet of the Apes, in terms of like the apes, um, trying to find scientific breakthroughs. Um, also, you also have to remember that this movie came out the year before we went to the moon.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Obviously, like
Just
space
just
exploration was a
thought.
huge part of the influence of this. And because like the 50s and 60s was like the obviously there's George Méliès and who did a lot of early sci-fi, but like 50s and 60s were a time, especially the late 60s. This came out 2001 A Space Odyssey came out. These were big sci-fi films that really made a big impact in cinema. And this takes the approach of this is a really interesting look at where society was then. And what's even more uncomfortable is our society almost mirrors that now. And it's not a, these are my perspective, not a fun thing to be mirroring and going back towards, where this whole entire movement of society needs to be run by this dogma of this is our way, and if you're not part of that way, you're our enemy, and we will lock you up.
Let me take a night.
Yeah, I took
And
note of. Oh, I'm sorry.
no, go ahead, Kevin.
I took note of a quote that kind of highlights what you're saying there. So there's a part where it's in during the tribunal scene when they're in the cave examining the evidence, and what I forget the ape's name that was running it, but he's talking to the scientist, and he says, "Your conclusion is premature. Have you forgotten your scripture?" And that kind of encapsulates their whole worldview there. Their
Also, did
whole
you
Where
notice the
government
monkey,
system.
like the see no evil and hear no evil? And speak no evil. You
mhm.
saw that, right? And I like two, three thumbs up even for the movie not kind of like making that a joke. It's just kind of like as subtle, and then it just like cuts
Yeah.
to like the next shot. Like I like that tiny little like a tiny little thing. But yeah, no, totally.
I just want to talk a little. Can we talk a little bit about the like there's certain scenes in the movie that don't have like, or like really like barely have any dialogue. Like I noticed it the scene when you first have the apes chase at the scene where where they're chasing Taylor, through buildings and like outside in like the town square. I mean, like I know, I think one dialogue heavy, and like you do get to like what it's like what they're saying. But like with those two scenes, like when like when like the humans are being chased and then Taylor's being chased, like I was like absorbed just as much in those scenes because like you're just because you know you're just watching, you're not listening to dialogue, but like you're tracking their movements through like throughout these environments, and like it was just like those are two like very absorbing sequences to watch in my opinion.
Yeah, because
Yeah, it was
the
like a hunt.
first mhm, the first half hour of this film is a lot of buildup. And this film is incredibly well shot. There's some really impressive shots of there's one moment of them like trying to scale down this decline down the side of a mountain. There's this shot of them walking across the desert with like the sun either just coming up or going down. It was like striking.
I was going to point out
Leon
that exact shot.
Leon Shamroy, who was the cinematographer of this film, just went hard and delivered some really incredible work. And Jerry Goldsmith's score in those moments too. It's that first half hour is so mysterious, and this is the perfect example of a movie that I wish I knew nothing about, didn't know the title, didn't know anything, and could just go in completely blind. Because how crazy would that be? 32 minutes into this movie, and you see an ape riding a horse, and you're just like, what?
Apes riding on horses continues to be the coolest thing ever.
Yes.
Mm.
Has not gotten
Especially
old.
also dual wielding machine guns,
Yeah.
jumping through fire,
Oh,
specifically Dawn of the
that
Planet of the Apes.
that was
Um,
sweet.
just the opening part of this is a survival film, and it's very mysterious. And then to your point, Vinny, the part where they're chasing Taylor through the city, the part where they're being hunted, where they first reveal the apes, those are intense moments. And this is incredibly well shot. Schaffner, it's really interesting because like he's not like a household director name, but he directed the hell out of this movie. And Patton's also one of my favorite films as well. He made two incredible films, and he definitely doesn't get enough credit for to making one. First off, two completely different movies. They are very different, but also being able to like really direct action well and make it thrilling, and just the whole entire structure of the last scene of the movie, the camera work, that slow like as the camera pan like moves to the left and you just start to see the outline of the crown of the Statue of Liberty and you're just like, what? And then I have to this is one of my favorite acting moments ever is when Charlton Heston just completely loses it and does the whole minute those maniacs and just like down on the ground and just completely starts yelling, you damn you all to hell. It just is so extra.
And the woman on the horse is probably thinking, like, what the hell is going on?
I'm just imagining that actress specifically just being like, holy what's he doing? But also the in character, like Nova doesn't understand anything, and he's just like losing his mind. And just that shot of the Statue of Liberty there is one of the most iconic shots in the history of cinema. And it was parodied so well in Spaceballs. It's like Spalls. Well, there goes the planet.
Oh shit.
I was thinking of that. Yeah.
Spaceballs.
Also, Shane, the in the like towards the beginning, like after they're doing like the whole like captain's log, whatever the hell, and then
Hmm.
the crash of the ship
Yep.
into the water, and also just like floating, and I guess kind of like I don't know, like out of control or whatever, like it through the atmosphere and then into the water. The weird camera angles and also
Yep.
like the odd extraterrestrial Like, is that a musical instrument even that you're like putting in the score, kind of like music? It is very interesting. And I
Like the
was thinking about
female captain,
Shining.
right? Where
Say
she's
what?
revealed to be dead. The female captain who's revealed to be dead. The soundtrack is literally screaming at
Yep.
you.
Oh yeah.
Mhm, mhm, mhm.
That was a creepy shot, like when you see what happened to her.
It was.
This
Details, you know.
movie has so many inspired filmmaking choices and music choices from a composer. Because like Jerry Goldsmith's like a legendary film composer. And like this score is so great that they even had to incorporate some of it in Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. There was a couple moments like, I hear what you're doing. I get that reference. I've watched this movie so many times. But it's this whole film is so well put together and it can do the heady kind of high science fiction contemplating society, but it could also, go on a chase and also Charlton Heston's game. And like, I wouldn't want to mess with Chuck Heston. He he looks like somebody you wouldn't want to mess with. Especially Taylor, because like Taylor has reckless abandon, and it's just like I would not want to mess with that man at all. And that whole entire sequence, it's like the he's always choosing violence, like choking out people or hitting people. It's just like, and you see why these apes don't like humans. You're it. You're 100% it.
One thing I would like to discuss a little bit is a little bit on Charlton Heston's performance, and I would like to continue discussing his character a little bit. But
Mhm.
I do think the way he chose to play a lot of his reactions throughout the movie was pretty good. Starting from the beginning, and I know it's a little bit of a weird moment, but when he's laughing crazily in the beginning there, I actually like the setup to that because he has just found out that he's looking at his clock and he's in the year he finds out he's in 3978. And then he looks at the flag, and that's kind of what the U.S. flag, and that's kind of what sets him off because he's thinking we're so far in the future, America probably doesn't exist anymore, and that's kind of what sets him off into the laughing fit. And I feel like that just kind of he just rolls with that for the rest of the movie. He's kind of high anxiety throughout the whole movie, and I thought that was a good choice given the situation. Again, makes it a shame that his more calm crewmates got what happened to them.
Well, that moment of his of him like laughing like kind of crazily, like that could very well foreshadow his mental break at the very end of the movie.
Mhm. Well, because the
Just,
thing is,
It's a good point that
just a thought.
he's really on edge. Like he could be cracking up through this whole movie. I
Right.
didn't really think of it that way.
he is such the character that like what kind and they discuss this, what kind of human being would agree to this? Like he calls out the one doctor for the glory. It's like you wanted to do this so that some copper statue turning green right now to be standing there and everybody remembers you. And it's just like, why Taylor do this? He is so done with humanity. He is gone in terms of wanting to live in society or anything that he will literally go literally anywhere else. And I think the hilarious thing is he wound right back on Earth. The long and the hard way. No.
Quick thing about that, actually. One, good foreshadowing over the fact that he stumbles across the Statue of Liberty by saying that line.
Oh,
Uh, Second thing, though, and I'm
Yep.
going to pose this question to everybody, just so we're clear, the mission was that we're going to send these four scientists to go into deep space as the expectation that we're going to catch up with them and we
yeah,
be able to catch up with somebody
in
in
like one or
the
two
near future.
millennia.
Because I mean, it's a suicide mission, which is why
Yes.
Taylor understands it's a suicide mission. But did the other scientists think this would be a suicide mission? Like, Did they
Well,
understand
I
that?
feel bad for the female astronaut because, like, towards I think the middle or something, like he said, like, yeah, like her role was to kind of like be like Eve basically in whatever Garden of Eden that they find, which is not the greatest
That's one thing I wanted to
What?
mention.
autonomy
Well,
wise.
well, and that's the interesting thing too, because was that the distinction, or is that what Taylor was putting on her?
See, I wanted to
Because
discuss this. I'm sorry.
when I was just because he specifically, well, it's where he was still negging the other doctor about his legacy, and he's like, and you know what? Without her, you're gonna be it. You're gonna be the last of us. It's like pointing out the fact it's like it's three dudes. Unless they magically find humans somewhere, or they venture out trying to sleep with aliens, there aren't going to be any more humans after
He
this
had no
point.
problem accepting his female companion.
That's what I was going to say.
He had
That
no
was a little
problem.
disconcerting to me,
Like a
actually.
person that's like lower functioning intelligence has
She
no
can't even
problem with
speak.
that.
Yeah, that little
Can't
spoon,
speak.
big spoon was like really like super quick.
We're in the 50s, the perfect woman.
Can't talk. This channeling Shape of Water real well here. Michael
Also,
Shannon's
why did
pink
you kiss
from
the
that movie.
female? Why did you kiss the female doctor? Why did he kiss the monk, the ape doctor? Why was that? Like, I was wondering, like, because
Because
he shook one person's hand, and he shook the other person's hand, and I was like, oh, isn't he going to shake her hand? And he's like, no, I want
nope,
to kiss
he
you.
he wants some sugar.
And I'm like, ah,
Yeah.
man, you're not, you're not an ally.
He's a
Damn.
furry too.
He's got that ape riz going on. That's what they wanted to show
But,
us.
It's a
but,
madhouse,
but,
everybody. A
but,
madhouse.
Apron
now at
is
the
wild,
but now
James.
at the end of but now at the end of the Tim Burton remake, like when Mark Wahlberg leaves the planet, doesn't he kind of like almost like make out with Helena Bonham character,
Yes.
Helena Bonham Carter's character, but like he give like he like that kiss lasts for like several seconds.
Yes, and Mark Wahlberg does not have the charisma points of Charlton Heston to just be like Charlton Heston is definitely the kind of actor that has the confidence where it's like, yeah, my character could sleep with literally any female of any species. It's exactly what's happening in this movie, where he's just like, I'm just
Captain
like,
Kirk.
yeah, I want a piece of that. Come here, Zira, give me a kiss. 'Cause Taylor is a piece of shit.
Mm.
You're not a good person. And whether this is like that dark, where it's just like, yeah, this is what humanity's come to in 1960s. Taylor's it.
Yeah.
We should all be
But
so proud.
I like Shane. I like Shane that you said like he might be the last person that we'd want to survive to represent the human
Yep.
race, but the qualities he has uh,
Or
are
what?
they equip him very well to survive and to
Yep.
pass those. I mean, he's ready to, like you said, to take this woman and give her his seed, shall we say? Like
Yep.
he's very
He's
well
ready.
poised to have to continue humanity, right? So like there is that, and I didn't really give him credit for that, I suppose. Watching the movie. So
I think one important point to bring up is that Taylor does evolve throughout the film. Like, he doesn't become a better person. He's still an asshole. But what changes is his perspective on humanity. Back to my point earlier where I was a bit humorous about, like, humans suck. I hate humanity. Apes, humans suck. You shut your mouth. We don't suck. That's basically his arc in this movie. Is he's relearning why humanity needs to continue, and that definitely is shown in the fact that like he's real quick to be like, well, Nova, let's repopulate the planet, because it also becomes a thing where it's like he can't let the apes win. He's just like, humans used to rule this place, and over my dead body, you're going to continue to rule this planet. And it's that kind of energy, and that's humanity. Whether we like it or not, that's that's humanity in a nutshell. Is that we will not let the power go.
Mhm.
And he's definitely trying to reignite that power. And he even has that moment towards the end of the film because it seems like him, Cornelius, and Zero are good. And then he calls them out. It's like, you guys were real quick to test on me, weren't you? Where it's just like, he knew what game he was playing the whole entire time. And he was real quick to be able to throw that back in their faces. Because the most decent people in the center of this film are Cornelius and Zero.
Yeah.
Like, they are legitimately good people. They want the truth to be out. They're trying to live their best life. And, you know, there are people that will be like, well, they're terrible because what they did to quote unquote animals. And there are people today, but to be frank, what they were doing is the equivalent of what we do to, chimps and all kinds of other animals and rabbits and testing and stuff like that. In their mind, in their world, it was no different because humans are just animals. And that's the uncomfortable place that this film puts us in, where it's just like, yeah, how's that feel?
Would you rather be the oppressor or would you rather be the oppressed?
Taylor, always the oppressor. There's
Right.
no way I'm going to be the
Right.
oppressed. And
Like,
he'll
but you're
do
not supposed to be
anything.
oppressing. We're supposed to be.
And it's very fitting that those two characters that are probably the best morally are
Mhm.
probably facing life in prison or worse.
Oh, mid-set.
Poor Kevin. Um, we'll get back to I'm not going to talk too much about the sequels, but like these films turn into like the next, at least the next film, Cornelius and Zero are a big part of, and then they're the protagonists of the third film. Like they're the ones we go around with, and Roddy McDowall is in all five of them. He plays Cornelius in three of them, and then he plays Caesar in two of them. So like it's so fascinating that like Roddy McDowall becomes like the star of this franchise when you had somebody like Charlton Heston, who was the one who anchored the first film. But I guess I've just throwing some few thoughts out there. Like Dr. Zayas, I feel like is one of the most interesting antagonists in movies because what he represents is so complex and interesting. Because like Dr. Zayas is doing everything he does because he believes he is doing what's right for ape kind. And that's the scary part, right? Where it's just like everything he does, he thinks he's doing for good reasons.
Or at least he's doing it so he can stay on top. So he can.
I feel like that's also a bonus. He's fully aware of the fact that like the orangutan, which there's elitism, there's classism in this ape culture. Like this ape culture is not perfect. And why not? Because they're a reflection of us.
There seems to be racism against chimps going on in this movie.
Well, and they
Or
also
just
extend.
anti-intellectualism. Like it's you guys see like both
Yep.
ways. Yeah, which is also just as bad and not great
Also
and
very
cultural
relevant in
and very relevant
2024.
today. Yeah. Also, there was like random, just like super random. Before I forget, I thought it was interesting when the astronauts in the beginning of the movie come and they first see before like the whole like apes on horses. You see they are looking at those humans just like eating and stuff like that, and it's like, oh yeah, so I mean they seem mute, but I don't know, maybe like in 6 months we'll rule the planet, and it's like, oh that's that pilgrim mindset. Oh, okay,
Yep,
gotcha.
that is Taylor's exact words. It's like based off of this, within 2 months, 6 months, we'll be ruling this planet. It's just like
Yeah.
that.
A little
It's that.
questionable, a little sus.
You've
Very
been
sus.
warned.
and I feel like that's part of the taking of Nova as his mate. Of it's just like I'm gonna become part of this community. I'm gonna rule it with an iron fist, um, and a shaved face, which also I thought that was really funny. Which is like you look even uglier with the fur on your face.
His response back to that too is when he's talking about how the young kids are growing their beards because it's during the beatnik and the hippie era. So like,
Yep.
I thought that was kind of cool and also kind of reflects his like disdain for humanity on where it was left off at, which is funny to hear that from someone in the 60s when you're thinking about how people are just like, people are disdained with like our current generation and whatnot.
Well, and
Yeah,
I think a
Cornelius
meta.
says,
Go
oh,
ahead,
sorry.
Kevin.
Oh, he says somehow it makes you look less intelligent. That's what he
Yes.
said. After he shaves.
It's very interesting too because like if you meta commentary this, Charlton Heston is one of the most iconic conservative actors in the history of Hollywood. So like it's very interesting. Like it's so interesting the films that he would pop up in between this and Soylent Green and everything. That is very much like I think this is your politics here, and it's very interesting because like he's iconic for a lot of these performances. He's also iconic for playing Moses and Judah Ben Hur. So like that too, but it's very interesting kind of perspective of he's encouraging the young man's like don't trust anybody over the age of 30, and in real
Yeah.
life he's like these goddamn hippies. So
Yeah, there's a line where I forget who says it, but they say, like, I'm disillusioned. You can't trust the older generation. And I think it's Charlton Heston's character that replies, he goes, I know what you mean.
yeah,
Mhm.
I forget who said the lines.
it was Zira's nephew. What the hell's his name? Was it Lucius? I
That
think.
that kind of checks out. Like Lucius was the young nephew in
Yeah,
Gladiator too, wasn't it? Yeah.
Really?
there you go.
A lot of actors I
Everything
didn't
in a
recognize
movie.
because they're in prosthetics in this movie.
Fair. I guess does anybody else have anything else that they wanted to add, discuss about Planet of the Apes?
I can go. I usually my thoughts crystallize more as we have these conversations. So I'm realizing that probably my biggest issue with the movie is that I want the world to be fleshed out more, and that's been done, I guess, like a lot. So for those of us that have only seen the original, is it necessary to go in order to watch the sequels, or could I skip ahead to um, the Andy Serkis era Planet of the Apes movies?
Well, so just to clarify something, the Andy Circus era ones have nothing to do with this. Like this is not the same timeline. The original five have a cyclical story. Like you eventually kind of wind up in the same place because there's a lot of time travel involved in these movies, which is very interesting. If you watch if you want to expand this story, you watch the other four original films, but the new ones is taking a much more grounded approach. Like the fall of humanity is not from, this is the late 60s, the Cold War. This is nuclear holocaust. Like that's the expectation. Rise of the Planet of the Apes is uncomfortably realistic now, post COVID, where it's like, yep, it was a flu. It's just like, yep, a flu would totally take us out because we're freaking stupid.
Yeah,
Uh,
you have the very unsettling opening scene in Dawn of of like like the globe and it's like tracking
a
the different
pandemic,
flights going
yep.
back and forth and then you just see like all of like the red like spreading across like all of the land, all of the continents and everything.
Yeah,
The
they call
micro
it the simian flu,
right,
right?
Joe?
Yep.
Simian flu. Yep.
Coach.
At
Too
least,
random, Matt.
And the new
at
ones
least,
use some of the same characters, right? Like
um,
Cornelius, I heard, is actually the protagonist in the new movie, and they flipped
no.
his role, or maybe not. I just read it. I
So
haven't seen the new one yet.
they make references. Like Caesar is in both. Like Roddy McDowall plays Caesar, who is the savior of the apes in the fourth and the fifth original Planet of the Apes films. And then that's the story that they focus on because like they with the new films they did not start in the super distant future and then use time travel to circle back around to like how this all started. They just started where it started. And at some point, I'm imagining we will get to the point where Kingdom is 300 years into the future after um, war. So, like, they're
Okay.
slowly getting there. But, like, I imagine at some point, apparently they have, like, 12 films in mind. I'm like, holy shit. Uh, keep it going. I'll see all of them. But, like, I imagine they'll get to the point where it is literally a Planet of Apes.
Yeah, like 1,000 years
Because
in the future. Yeah,
yeah,
or
it's
2,000.
not. Yeah, because even in Kingdom, it's not that yet.
Mhm.
It seems like it probably is, but it really isn't. By the time you really process through the film, there's still a human problem to say for the apes and their control of the planet. It's I feel like this film is purposefully isolated and lack of world building because that is the religion. They're not allowed to go anywhere else. They can't go into the forbidden zone. We can't possibly know what's out there because you'll die. But what really is out there? And that's the religious aspects at work being like it's a sin. You'll that's heresy if you go out there and you'll be put to death. So they do wind up expanding more on the world in beneath the Planet of the Apes, and it's wild. It is the weirdest shit. I promise you that. So it goes into some interesting places for sure.
I'll be honest, I had no desire to watch it, but now after talking to you, Shane, maybe I'll have a few drinks and see where the night takes me. I don't know.
I think it's worth watching once. It rehashes a lot of this first film, which is why it doesn't really stand up on its own. But if you want a movie that makes fresh, new choices for a sequel, Beneath the Planet of the Apes certainly does because it takes this franchise in a crazy, weird direction.
And that's the one that has the really dark ending.
Yes.
Is
Okay.
that the first sequel after this one?
Yep.
Okay.
So
Because then,
it's beneath and then conquest.
so it's Planet of the Apes, Beneath Planet of the
Right,
Apes,
yeah.
Escape the Planet of the Apes.
Conquest.
Conquest, I think, is the last one. I always get this one wrong. Beneath oh, sorry. Conquest is the fourth one, then it's Battle for the Planet of the Apes.
Okay.
Because like how many goddamn words can they think of to throw in front of the Planet of the Apes before they start getting absolutely ridiculous?
People were
They're gonna
too
test
afraid
it.
that Bill Gates was going to get them, was going to start tracking them, so they didn't get the vaccine. And this is what caused Planet of the Apes.
Oh man, it's a different
Well,
mind virus. It's a different mind virus. It's not.
well, in
It makes you less woke. It makes you less woke.
well, today in our own world, I guess it'll be the planet of the pangolins
Oh
or
my
the
God.
planet of the bats, based off of what started the spreading the flu.
Planet of the Bats.
And if you want to know more about how the actual COVID virus was spread, The real source of it is the South Park special that you should totally watch.
I was scared. I
I've
didn't know what
seen
you were
it.
about to say. I didn't know what you were about to say. I thought you were about to.
Let's just say, Mickey Mouse has a big part of it.
Oh man, I thought you were about to plug like a scary conspiracy theory website or something.
No,
Are we on South Park yet? No, not yet.
like it's like, Randy, you're gonna have sex with that pangolin. That's exactly how this goes. So you're welcome. You have plenty of recommendations that come out of this episode of the Movie Club. So
Hear me out
before
though. Muppet Planet of the Apes. Who would be the only human?
Charlton Heston
Please. Can
has to be Charlton Heston.
Kermit
I
is
wanna
Kermit.
watch-
I'm going to say Kermit, though. I'm going to say
Kermit.
Kermit because I want to see
Yeah.
Kermit get upset and go, ah!
Just simply have him be the only non-ape. Yeah.
Oh man. But like, wow. So I did one other recording today, and I did talk about Muppet Treasure Island. I demand more Muppet adaptations of classic stories. I demand them. They should not have stopped after Treasure Island. The next one totally should be Planet of the Apes. And now this will indeed be Muppet That Movie segment before the end of the year. Muppet That Movie, Planet of the
Well,
Apes. And some of you will be on it.
well, the Muppets have done two classic adaptations. They've done Treasure Island and A Christmas Carol, but it's not enough. We need more. Like you said, we need more.
It's not enough. They should not have stopped at two. They should have passed go and kept going. Collect much money, way more than
Oh,
$200.
Imagine a Muppet Clockwork Orange.
You're just feeding me plenty of ideas for Muppet That Movie on my talk show. So we'll discuss this later.
Yeah.
But does anybody else
Yeah.
have anything to throw out there about Planet of the Apes before we wrap up this crazy discussion and this whirlwind that we just went through?
Does Dr. Sayers get to go to Applebee's? Personally, I think no, because I think that he has weird views. I don't know if I would want to sit across from. But then also, it's 60 was a long time ago. Maybe his views have changed, and maybe now Dr. Zayas is Brett. You know what I mean? Like maybe he's still.
The problem I think he'd have is that he'd go into an Applebee's and he'd see all the kitsch on the walls, and he'd lose his mind. He'd want the place burned down because it's showing
Heresy.
how human it's heresy.
Heresy.
It's heresy.
The spinach
guessing
art, like
no-
humans made this.
I'm guessing no
instead of coconut
to.
filled, he's banana filled. No, I'm just kidding.
I'm guessing no to Taylor as well. Probably don't want to go to Applebee's with Taylor. But I do think we should go to Applebee's with Cornelius and Zira. I think they'd be a nice time.
They wouldn't stop talking though. Sometimes you would just want to eat. But I feel like they'd be observing and keep talking, and that'd be a little annoying.
Joe,
At the very
I
least,
love you.
Zira.
You are not the person to make that comment about somebody.
For a fact, Taylor does
Big
not tip.
country.
I promise you, he does not tip. He does not tip.
Taylor does not tip. Taylor leaves his phone number for the waitress and no tip.
He's on Team Mr. Pink.
100%. Oh man. Joe, did you have an actual point that you wanted to
no,
bring
I
up
did.
before Matt
No, I
brought
did.
up the
No, I did.
Applebee's?
No,
Go
I
ahead.
actually did because I think going back to the whole aspect of good sci-fi, I feel like the message has to be driven home. And it's interesting because like the other movie, I think in comparison to this is like Idiocracy, where you kind of have the same setup, but instead of a character that's just more despicable than Luke Wilson, who's supposed to be like the average person, does he have a likable quality? Sure, but he's not nearly as an asshole as much as Taylor is. I would say Planet of the Apes drives the message home a little bit further because this is supposed to represent his nightmare in a sort of way, like in a Christmas Carol kind of way, where it's like, because of what you've done and your attitude, this is kind of the consequence of that, which does drive that message home a little bit more. So that's really what I wanted to add.
So my last
Natural
question
point.
is, would Taylor wear a mask?
Say what?
Would Taylor wear a mask?
You know he doesn't wear no masks.
No, he's better than the virus. He'd want humanity to be like, you know what? I'm going to spread it. I don't care. Go
Damn
out guns
dirty
blazing.
masks.
Joe, I really appreciate that point because Taylor is part of the problem. Like, he is the kind of person why humanity blew itself up. Like the kind of people like him in charge are the reason that we blew ourselves to pieces, and then calls out us, calls out humanity for being maniacs. It's like, you know why? It's you.
And here's the thing about that too, though, is if we go back to the very beginning, he's the only one that knows that we're 2,000 years into the future, where it's kind of an expectation that they're going to be traveling far, but under their impression, they were still surprised that 18 months in deep space turned into 2,000 years. That should have been his responsibility to the crew to let them know that.
Yeah, I wanted to point that out too, because he had an opportunity to handle things a little differently. He actually has a quote in the beginning. He says, "It's a fact, Landon. Buy it and you'll sleep better." But I don't think he's the type of person who would end up caring about the facts.
No.
Taylor is quite an interesting character, for sure. But that was a spirited and very interesting discussion of Planet of the Apes. I hope you all enjoyed it. And if you haven't watched Planet of the Apes or watched it 10 times like I have, you should definitely at least watch it once. I know probably a lot of people have seen the newer ones. This is certainly one worth going back. And some of the movie club here, I think, have decided that they might check out some of the other Planet of the Apes older ones, at least beneath It's Wild. But from Joe, from Matt, from Jim, from Kevin, from Vinny, from Shane, thank you as always for tuning in and supporting the Development Hell podcast.